let's get straight into it. A story that has come about today, team, is that the Melbourne Football Club have really bunkered down, and what they're actually feeling is that as much as they want to be at the MCG, of course they'd love to have all the Melbourne supporters down at training. Being away has given them a whole new sort of hub and a concentration that they're working on. So much so that now they're going to, whether they win, lose or draw in the grand final, they can't draw it anymore, so if they win or lose, they're not going to come back to Melbourne, and there won't be an official coming together of the clan, if you like, until the COVID rules open up, and they plan to do so probably in December. They want to do it as soon as possible. They're not snubbing their supporters, but that's where it's got to. So they'll probably go and have their end-of-season trip. They'll stay in Perth, have some celebrations if they win, commiserations if they lose. But ultimately, if they do win the pennant, there'll be a big day at the MCG in December for the families and friends. It's an interesting whole psyche that's going on, which we're going to deep dive on Footy Classified tonight into. Cara, your thoughts?
Well, we first of all don't want to be thinking about bringing the cup home in December because there's a lot to go on before that happens, Matthew. But look, a lot of fascinating stories coming out of Perth and the way Melbourne are handling this 2-week lead into the grand final compared with the Western Bulldogs, who of course are in their own form of quarantine up until Friday because of the nature by which they've had to get there and all the travel, etc. Melbourne they're not calling it a curfew, but the players are calling it a curfew. Alan Richardson, the head of football, has basically said we want you all back at the Joondalup Resort every night by 9 p.m. And we'd rather you all eat dinner together at the resort. But those of you who come from Perth, or Perth originally, have families here, if you do want to go and have dinner with family or friends, we want you back here and in your own beds by 9 o'clock, or back at the resort, which is an interesting call.
Sure. But Cara, surely this would have been the rule. They've been in Perth for ages. They just beat Geelong in a prelim in Perth. So
yep.
what would have changed? There was
an element of quarantine in part of their other games.
So wouldn't you, Ross, just try and keep things as normal as possible for the way they've gone?
What's really surprising, I don't think you need rules for grown men, young men that have got a premiership opportunity in 2 weeks' time. So
I can think of 2 grand finals were nearly just completely derailed because blokes wouldn't do what you'd expect them to do in grand final week. Yeah,
but if you've got to force them to do it, all I know is you're making a rod for your back. What happens if someone rolls up at 10? What's the penalty? If it's Petrarca, it's a half hour from the CBD, Joondalup. So they're really saying you've got to be out of the CBD, you've got to be out of Fremantle, out of Cottesloe by 8:30. I think it's a little bit extreme.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Look, I can't glean how hard and fast it is and what would happen if you were home by 10, but I would imagine it would be frowned upon if it kept happening. The other difference is that Melbourne have a bit of a Hawthorn leading into this grand final, as opposed to...
They would hope so. They were nearly completely Hawthorn at one stage, weren't they? They're going to merge with each other.
They would love to have the results Hawthorn have had in recent years, certainly in the last decade, Ed, but they're not being... It's been frustrating for the media, and it's gone as far as the AFL, that Melbourne have not been as open as the Western Bulldogs have been. And the Western Bulldogs, of course, as I say, have had to do all their interviews at the moment via Zoom because of this quarantine situation. But look, there has been some frustration. When Collingwood was last at a grand final, Ed, both of its grand finals consecutive, 10 and 11. Richmond last year. I know North Melbourne do it whenever they're in finals. There's an open slather day when you go to wherever the team is and you can talk to whoever you want.
I thought it was mandated by the AFL to have that open slather day.
No, today that you could go to Joondalup Resort, but you had to line up certain interviews. A lot of interviews knocked back. The Western Bulldogs made everyone available, bar Adam Treloar, who they say has done enough.
He's had enough, yeah.
But no, it's just an interesting way of handling things, and I just wonder whether... I know the AFL are frustrated because Melbourne are a team who are trying to become one of the powerhouses, and if they win the premiership, no one's going to care.
Well, you talk about the Hawthorn model, Caroline, and that's okay because they won 3 in a row. But there was no pre-grand final bye. This is a whole new model that you have to adapt to.
Well, next week it's shut down completely with Melbourne.
Well, I would think this week is the opportunity. Put everyone up, get it done. Then the next week, let your leaders, let the senior coach do more of the heavy lifting.
By the way, T-shirt sales for Melbourne are on track to be 3 times that of Richmond last year, I'm told. So people are really getting on board, and particularly over in Perth, they're getting great support.